So Carrie, yeah, I'll ask you the first question. Just introduce the role that you've taken on this year and the strength of your club and the challenges that your club faces.
Okay, I'm the outgoing president for Sandy Hill Toastmasters. And the strengths of our club right now, I think, are high member engagement. Our members are pretty engaged. Our meetings are pretty energetic, and we've been able to make them a little more interactive. So I think that's been a strength for us this year and has helped us, has had peter down effects in different ways. The challenges we face, I mean, we still are challenged with mentoring. I think we're still challenged with creating a structured mentoring program that kicks in, that takes people through, the mentors and the mentees, so they know what they're doing, what they need to do. We're challenged as well with having a lot of young, new, inexperienced members, many of whom need a lot of support, want a lot of support. And like all clubs, we're challenged with membership, trying to get new members and keep them.
Yeah, true. I think that mentor structure has got to be the biggest challenge for so many clubs now. And Fran, if you could tell us what your role or roles are this year and a quick bit about the challenges and strengths of your clubs.
So I am a member of 3 clubs, and I have an executive role in each. I am the Vice President of Education for Renfrew, Vice President of Membership for Pembroke, and the Vice President Public Relations for the Deep River Club.
Ah, good for you.
So I've tried to get out of some of them, but it just hasn't happened when you only have 8 members in your club, and it's difficult to not be on the executive. But at least I only have 1 role in each club. There have been times I've had 2 roles in the club. So start. So the mentoring, because we are all small, we do a lot of really individual mentoring with each other, no matter what level we're at. In our Pembroke Club, we actually have 3 DTMs. So we were able to break that down a little bit more to take the DTMs could each take on some people, and then the people they are mentoring could take on some of the new members as well. So we actually have that set up in Pembroke. In Renfrew, we've just struggled to have 8 members. And I've been doing a lot of the mentoring, but now some of the other people have been there long enough they can start doing the mentoring as well. In Deep River, we've got some new members, and we have a lot of people whose English is a second language. But Gabrielle, who's been the president up there, is actually going to be the area director, and she's been doing a fabulous job of mentoring and getting people in as well. And now we have people who are starting to work through the Pathways program, and they're able to start mentoring other people as well.
Okay, is one of your challenges, out of curiosity, that you have a lot of experienced members, even though the clubs aren't big? Do you have any Pathways reluctance in all that, or have they mostly embraced it?
We've been working through it, and we actually have Morris in Deep River, who is 84 years old. He's 84, and he has been reluctant, but he has now started the Pathways program, and he's done his first 2 speeches.
Beautiful. Okay, we got to highlight him somehow, because if Morris can figure it out, I think that's inspiration for all of us.
One of our members actually went to his house and sat down with him with the computer and went through it for him.
Okay, we're going to get back to that. That's a big deal. Okay, just hang on to that thought for a sec. So Steve, I'll go to you if you can tell us about your 2 clubs and the roles that you've taken on.
Okay, I'm a 2 monitor guy, and I always send the arrow across the wrong way on the screen.
No worries.
Oh. Anyways, some of us are slow learners. I'm one of them. Steve Fitzmillet, I've been with Toastmasters since 2005. I started that journey in Australia and then came here and found a club. The club I'm in, Downtown Kingston Toastmasters, has been President's Distinguished every year since it chartered. It's always had a mentoring culture. We never have less than 25 members. We run 6 Speechcraft courses. We've had people make it to division contests and area directors and blah, blah, blah. Club's in great shape. Most recently, though, it birthed 2 other clubs. So one is the Queen's Community Club, which was done about 3 years ago. And then most recently, Tariq Hussain led the chartering of the Keys Club, which I also just joined. The clubs are entirely different. The Keys Club is more of an English as a second language club. It's virtually all new people, except for maybe a handful of Toastmasters. And they've had to take a very different approach to just getting people started on their icebreaker, let alone register for Pathways and so on. So the clubs are like chalk and cheese, as they'd say in Australia. They're totally different in terms of their challenges and learning approach and how we do things. So hopefully I'll get a chance to share some of the differences tonight. The great thing about Dundalk Kingston Toastmasters is from day one, we've always emphasized mentoring, and we found easy ways to do it, which is important. It doesn't have to be onerous. And in fact, my argument has always been that if you're not doing it, you're making what you're doing harder for yourself already. So by getting it in, you actually save time and energy in the long run. So I'm delighted to be here. I'll be the Division A director this year. I've been on a bit of a sabbatical from official leadership, although I've run some workshops and seminars for Toastmasters in that time. So
That's great. Thanks, Steve. Well, that's perfect information, because what I'm getting from our three panelists are very diverse issues in the clubs, and that's exactly what we want to talk about. Especially, I'm fascinated by the challenge of a new club where most of the members are brand new and trying to figure things out, especially as it comes to a mentoring program. So, Carrie, I'd like to start with you, because you have an ACE VP Ed who has done a wonderful job this year. And the statistics for your club just on achievement in level 1 and level 2 has got to be either the best in the district or at least among the best in the district. I think it was 9 level 1 and 9 level 2s, which is spectacular, which I think you're probably almost every new member must have achieved a level 1. But if you could talk a little bit more about your VP Ed and what he did this year.
Sure. Yeah, we've had a really strong VP Ed this year. And it was really wonderful to see what he did, because he's a very different approach than what we'd had in the past. He's a very goal-oriented guy, and he brought that quality to our club. So I think it was something that we didn't have as strongly before. He really wanted to help members achieve their goals. So the first thing he did was to be a little bit more directive, certainly than I had been in the past and the club had ever been in the past, in terms of getting people to sign up for roles. When a new member comes in, they're immediately sitting down with him for an hour discussion about their goals, and he's helping them through pathways, giving them an overview of it, and getting them to, in that moment, choose a path and sign up. So, these are not things that we had done before, and we weren't quite sure how it would go.
So he met with every single member.
Every new member.
Every new member.
Every
Wow.
new member, yeah.
Okay.
And that was something he really wanted to do. He really wanted to understand people's goals and needs. And the other thing he did, which was really a change for us, was that he changed how he filled the agenda. He really wanted the agenda to be full, rather than us trying to get people to sign up. And so he introduced it was a new practice for us of, sign up for your role in advance, but if you don't, a couple of days before, he's going to be filling the agenda based on what roles he wants to assign you. And he did it in a good way, because it was not part of our culture of our club to do this, and he knew that. So he introduced it. I think he was a little tentative. He got feedback from the members right away. How did you feel about this? Some people were a little taken aback. Others said, well, it's okay. And I would say within 4 or 5 meetings, it became kind of integrated into how we did things. So that was kind of a lesson for me, to see how something that maybe seems like a bit of an uncomfortable shift can be done in a thoughtful way if you ask people for feedback and just give it a few weeks to kind of get integrated. And that's made a big difference with just the stability of the meetings.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you one more thing about that. Then I'll go to Steve with a very similar question. So my understanding is when he met with the new members, they figured out a date to give their icebreaker. So he basically said, you're a new member here now, and you should be giving your icebreaker in the first, whatever it is, for 6 weeks. Does that sound about right?
Exactly. I mean, like I said, he's a little bit more directive, or he tried to introduce that. So yeah, it was, this basically introducing the idea that in our club, this is what we do. We talk about your goals, and then we schedule your icebreaker. It wasn't what we had ever done before, but now it's what we do. And so new members, they don't know any different, right? They come in and that's sort of what we do, and they don't seem to have a problem with it.
That's so true.
I think it's great.
That's so true. And this is a really important point. So Steve, I think you had mentioned something similar along that lines. I think it was the scheduling of the icebreaker, or somehow setting a time frame for getting going.
So in the Downtown Kingston Toastmasters Club, which is again substantially different from Keys in terms of its makeup, the the way it's set up is we have a VP mentoring. There's someone who has specifically that role other than the VP education. Our theory is VP education already the busiest person in the club. And oh, by the way, go run pathways. It's like, you should get it. It's like a full-time job. They should pay you. So we said, well, what can we hive off? So we said, well, the mentoring function we'll give to somebody else. And we actually, in our bylaws, created a VP mentoring position. So as soon as someone becomes a member, we had an induction ceremony for one today. They're brought in. The VP ed right away is on to, okay, let's schedule your icebreaker. Because everyone knows we had a vote. We voted them in. Everyone knows they're a new member. So they get on the roster very quickly. And then we try and get them a mentor fairly quickly as well. Under the old Toastmasters, they had a great system, which was they recommended you assign somebody for their first couple of speeches just to get them going. And then once they knew everybody in the club and, if they want to get better at table topics, they might want a certain person to be their mentor, somebody who's really good at table topics. That's one way to do it. The main thing is I need somebody giving them feedback. And we are very quick to do that. So everyone in our club has a mentor, period. And eventually everyone will be a mentor. But that icebreaker, that happens extremely quickly. In the Keys Club, you had 15 new people and 5 Toastmasters. There were a lot of icebreakers. So they just told them, okay, everyone's doing an icebreaker. You 5 are going this week, you 5 are going the week after, and you 5 are going the week after that. Any questions? And it's English as a second language group. And if you didn't do that, many of them culturally would be too shy to step forward, right?
Right.
So I thought it was done, everyone's in the same boat. No one was any different than anybody else, and it worked really well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So these are pretty brilliant points because these are 2 clubs that had some of the highest level 1 and level 2 completions in the whole district.
Yeah, so what they did was the first week, 5 people gave speeches and experienced Toastmasters did the evaluation. Then I ran a educational on how to give an evaluation, sandwich method, really basic. In the second week, 5 people gave a speech, 5 people not giving a speech did the evaluations, then they flipped around the week after. So everyone got to do a speech and an evaluation. Of course, you're ticking through your projects pretty fast when you do it that way, right? So that was, Tarek Hussein was the brains behind that, I think.
Yeah, so another ace VP ed, right?
Yeah. Well, he's the VP out of that club, but he's also the president of my club and the area director of our areas. So
Okay, there you go. Highly
he doesn't gather
motivated
much
guy.
moss. Not much moss gathers on him.
I think Rebecca had a question. Is Downtown Kingston is not an advanced club, correct?
No, it's not.
But it has a lot of senior or experienced members in it.
Yeah, so I think we have 5 or 6 DTMs, including Brian Sutton, a past district director.
Yeah.
But we weren't always that way. That only happened about 5 years ago. For the first 5 years of our 10 years, we had a core of maybe 6 or 7 like solid Toastmasters and a lot of queens and military people who cycled through. We were never below 25, but Kingston's a transient town. Now we have a solid base of about 15, and there's about 15 who turn over every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, okay.
Because of education mostly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Fran, I'm going to go to you with a similar question. Have you ever tried to assign anything, or has any executive team in your 3 clubs ever tried to assign roles or assign speech dates?
Well, the three clubs are similar but different. So in Renfrew and Deep River, we actually at the end of the meeting go through the roles. And so we see who's going to be giving a speech, who's going to be doing what roles. In Pembroke, we're using the free toast host and encouraging people to sign up, but oftentimes people are not signing up till the last minute. So it seems to be more effective to do it at the end of a meeting in that. We also do educational tips every week for our Pembroke Club and the Renfrew Club, and occasionally for the Deep River Club. So the educational tips are all from the old, which have to be changed a little bit because of pathways. They're not the same educational, but we've been going through the ones that Toastmasters has provided and revamping those. But every week we have an educational tip so that new people, old people, everybody's getting that information. And we're encouraging people who are newer Toastmasters to do the educational tips as well. When we started Pathways, we did the same thing as Stephen did. Okay, we're going to do 5 this week, we're going to do 5 next week, and they're going to be evaluated because that was the best way to get everybody started, really.
So you gave 5 speeches in one night, in one like session?
One night, yeah.
Okay.
We didn't do table topics that night. We took a couple of other things out, and it's just like 5 speeches. And then we have an evaluation for each speech. So a different evaluator for each one. So then the evaluation portion, they had time to write up their evaluations and be able to give them as well.
I love that idea. So Steve did speech marathons.
Yep.
Fran's clubs did speech marathons. And Carrie, did your club also do a speech marathon or that type of thing?
We did. We had a similar night where everybody gave a speech. And so this is where Zoom is such a bonus, because we did it in breakout rooms. So every single person did a speech and an evaluation that night. And that's where we had like 9 people completed a pathway speech that night because of the speeches given. You know, a lot of them were pathways projects. So yeah, I thought that was a good idea. We want to do that again.
Yeah. So for sure, you can't do it all the time. It's pretty energy intensive. But it's well worth doing because it's just basically creating this incredible positive momentum for speech writing. Okay, so I'm hearing a couple of things here that we have to just clarify. One is this engagement of the new member right away, and even to the point of assigning the date for an icebreaker, which my club has always shied away from that. You know, we didn't want to tell anyone what to do. We had members there that took, you know, like 5 years to do their competent communicator manual. And we're kind of like soft hands on type thing. But I like this idea of assigning things because as Carrie said, I think new members they come in with no expectations. So if you tell them this is the way it is, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. No, that's fantastic. I love that kind of engagement.
Scott, there is another piece of that, which is because we assign it. Okay, so Toastmaster, Downtown Kingston Toastmasters, Keys, 2 totally different kettles of fish.
Yeah.
At Downtown Kingston Toastmasters, you get a mentor almost right away, and that usually is the person who will point you to the VP Ed to get you signed up. Keys has not implemented a mentoring program yet. That's the next step. So at Keys, it's a corporate club, and 4 or 5 of the staff from Keys, the Kingston Employment Services Group, it's like an extension of their job. They just made sure all the students who were part of Keys, you know, were, okay, this is what you're doing next week. So they took a different approach. They will eventually all get mentors. I've talked to Tarek about that. That's the next step for them, is put a mentoring program in effect. The other thing too is, though, if you have a club that's big like ours, like we have 25 to 35 members depending on the time in a 1-hour meeting, sometimes people are backlogged in speeches. So we will do exactly what Fran said. No table topics, no educational, you know, we'll skip a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to do a speech marathon. You can usually get about 3, you can get at least 4 or 5 speeches done in an hour. And that's a great way to clear backlogs.
Yeah. I just want to pick up on one thing you mentioned. The Keys Club, did you say they did like a buddy system for the mentoring? Because basically they didn't have any experience for mentoring.
No,
so
it was St. Lawrence College who did it.
Oh, that was St. Lawrence. Okay.
And we used to get a lot of St. Lawrence students into our club because it was one of their academic requirements. They had to join a club. So we like have 10 at a time. And rather than chew up all of our experienced Toastmasters looking after people for basically 6 months, we paired them up with each other and ran an educational on how to mentor. And then they each mentored each other for the rest of that 6 months.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because a lot of clubs shy away from it because they figure, well, you know, I'm not worthy of being a mentor yet. But that's a far better approach. Just team people up and go, you know, just do your best and you'll be fine. Karen, I think you have a question. Go ahead.
I actually had a comment.
Sure.
When we find that our clubs that aren't getting really involved in doing their presentations, what we'll do is we'll look at the various levels and pathways, who needs to do what in order to get to the next level. And then we'll hold an evening where we do only level 1 speeches, or we do level 2 speeches, level 3, doesn't matter what path you're in, but we do it that way. So we encourage people to step out of their shell so they know they're competing at the same level as anybody else. And so it just makes it a nice, smooth transition for an evening's meeting.
Yeah, I think, Steve, you mentioned something like that too, right? Where you're, if you have a whole bunch of new members, you're basically doing educational on how to write that icebreaker speech, and then they all give their icebreaker speech. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, so for Keys, they did kind of what Fran said. They didn't cover a lot of the roles. Like they maybe didn't do grammarian and timer the first week, and so they just focused on getting them through those speeches. And then each week they'd say, okay, we're going to do an educational on being a grammarian, because like 3/4 of the club had never been in Toastmasters before, right? Like the base level of knowledge was very low. So each week they would plug, I did 3 or 4 of the educational. I think they did about 10 or 12 altogether to cover off each role. And then they gradually have expanded the meeting to be a more full meeting like that you would recognize as a Toastmaster
That is a
meeting.
cool idea.
So
Yeah.
basically the whole KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
'Cause for someone to walk, like, especially an English as a second language person from another country, to walk into a room and there's 12 roles, I got to do like 9 of them in the next 6 months. So they
Yeah.
just took Tarek's brilliant. I wasn't behind this at all. I take no credit for it. Tarek was the guy who really put this together, and they just said, we're going to do it in chunks. We're going to get him down and get a speech done. Then we'll teach them to do an evaluation. Then we'll put them in roles like timer and grammarian. And now, like, I think after about a year, it's actually running just like a regular club would. Very
Yeah,
progressive.
that's
Yeah,
fantastic. Tarek sounds like a pretty bright guy. We got to chat with him one
you
day.
should. He's a good guy. Yeah.
Carrie, so let's talk about the mentorship program or the structure of it, or again, the strengths of it. So you said you had a bit of a struggle structuring the program. Can you describe what you're doing and again, what you think is being done well and what you'd like to get better at?
Yeah, what's being done well is that one thing we did is we started targeting mentors to mentor in areas that they're particularly interested in. For example, we have one senior mentor who's a storyteller, and she's really interested in mentoring storytelling or vocal variety. And that was just a kind of a strategy for getting people involved in mentoring in a way that didn't burn them out, because we had some people who had felt burnt out by their experience as well. So targeting people's interests and skills on the mentor side. And on the mentor side as well, I've been trying with some of our reluctant members who feel they're not up to being a mentor, to ask them to mentor a newer member who's maybe a few speeches behind, and mentor them for one project. So I usually pick the evaluation and feedback project because it's got 2 speeches and evaluation in it, so you kind of get bang for your buck. But it's one project, right? It sounds good, one project. And so they mentor that person through those 2 speeches and that evaluation. And what I've seen now is it's starting to extend beyond that, but that's the commitment. So the idea was to make it a very finite, short-term commitment that wouldn't scare people.
Yeah, that's clever. That's like Steve's comment. Figure out a way to make it simple and possible as opposed to this complex, complicated thing. Rebecca, you have a question? Go ahead.
Just 2 questions. Steve, you mentioned, I love the idea of doing the educational, whether it's on the new speech and the roles in there. Is that something that you're recording so that as new members come, you could essentially have a library that could be shared with them? Or how are you doing that?
I'd say no. As far as I know, they're not being recorded. What I say with keys is because they had a cold start with 15, non-Toastmasters, that approach worked very well. And they had tons of educationals. Now that the club is kind of functioning more like a regular club, they'll continue to do those educationals like any other club would, but they don't need to put the same level of emphasis on that they did at the beginning with a whole bunch of new Toastmasters. So I think the balance is shifting now. Now when I look at the meeting roles, I see a lot of the people who were all brand new to Toastmasters 8 months ago are now signed up to be like table topics master, table talk evaluator, speech evaluator. The educationals, we really front end loaded a lot of them, and now it's kind of going to what a more normal level of effort and educationals would be. As far as I know, they weren't recorded, but if you had a club that had a high turnover, that would actually not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to pick up on that, sorry, Rebecca, just one sec. What educationals did you give? Like, what
So
are the key ones?
Yeah, so I gave an educational on how to do evaluations. I gave an educational on, I've given so many in the last 6 months, I'm scrambling here.
Speech creation?
Yeah, I did a speech workshop with them, a 10-80-10 tool, how to plan speeches, which I've run in many places, including at a district conference, which was fun. Yeah, so basic speech planning tool, 10% for the introduction, 80% for the main body, 10% for the conclusion. And then how to build that, I did that for them. And
Right, high return educationals that make the biggest difference.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did the 10-80-10 one before they did their icebreaker, so they'd have at least a rough idea of where to start.
Okay. Sorry,
And
Rebecca, I interrupted your second question. Go ahead.
No, my gosh, no worries. Thank you for sharing that, Steve. Love that. And I think it'd be a great opportunity, like you said, whether it's high turnover or newer clubs, great opportunity to have a library, and a recommendation maybe that I'll put through to Tanya and the team, because it'd be great to have on the district website too.
Yeah.
Fran, when you chatted about the educational tips that you're sending out, like what would that look like? What are some of the things that you'd be sending out and encouraging people to try?
Well, sending out, no, we actually do them every week, like
Okay.
in our meeting.
Can you
So
tell me a little bit more
we've
about that?
gone through all the ones that the district has, like the Better Speaker series, the
Okay.
Advanced series, all of those we've gone through. I think we've done every one of them at least once, and some of them more than once. And some of them, when we're getting the newer members to do them and letting them improve on them as well, because they have to be changed a little bit. And maybe they're not doing the best job as they're learning, but still they're giving a speech, and they're taking that material and making it their own.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So it's a role on your agenda, right? The tip, like the tip of the week or the, yeah.
Well, it's the full 5 to 7 minutes, sometimes 8 to 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Perfect.
It's not just like a 2 or 3 minute tip where we're talking full 5 to 7 or 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Wow.
And
That's a brilliant way to build depth in the, like depth of knowledge in the club. You know, so when new people come in, there's all these experienced members passing that along.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on
Sure.
when looking at what members need when they come in and how a mentor can help. And one of our people in Renfrew, when he joined, I think he joined in September, and what he wanted to do was be able to speak before a large audience. So what comes up in October? Speech contest. So I suggested to him that he take on the role of the chair of the speech contest. And I said, I will sit in the front row. I'll give you the script. I'll sit in the front row. So if there's any problems that you have, I'm right there for you. And he did that. And he's gone on now to speak on television. He's done presentations on the radio. He's done a number of things. So looking at, sometimes it is that push, like right off the bat, like jump right in and get started. Even though they're quaking in their boots, it's just an opportunity to, let's go.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, to me, that's my experience too, is that when you set a standard, people rise to the standard. If you set a low standard or no standard, then there's a lot of waffling that happens. And usually it's not, it's not beneficial overall to the club. The next thing I'd like to talk about is pathways. So one of the challenges is helping a new member to pick a path and how to navigate the website. So Steve, I'll start with you. Is there anything that your clubs do just to help new members at least figure out those initial complications?
Yeah, it's mostly done by mentors who've already at least gone through, level 2, level 3 themselves. So they're pretty familiar with the navigation of the system. However, I was done level 3 and I was stuck because I couldn't figure out how to register I completed something. So I phoned our resident guru, our pathways guru in residence, Ben Anderson, who was, I think, our past president at the time. So we have 1 or 2 people who are really, really good at it. And they're kind of like the help desk. Like when you're banging your head against the wall going, I don't know how to pick an elective, you phone up Ben and say, how do I do this? And they'll walk you through it. On the key side, I'm not 100% sure. I think the key staff have been, because it's a corporate club, have actually, they're getting all pretty good on it, and they sit down one-on-one with their clients, who are members of the club. I haven't had much involvement in that part of it, but in Downtown Kingston Toastmasters, it's primarily done through mentors. That is the main way.
I love that concept of the Pathways Help Desk. My club, Ottawa Toastmasters, the executives stick around after each meeting. And if anybody has any questions, then they field the questions then, which at least gets people a bit unstuck. But that's a cool concept. We could probably, do more with that.
I will say, though, I printed off that Pathways guidebook, which I haven't had a chance to read through. It's going to be one of my projects because I want to be more proficient in it. I found the guidebook helpful. And I do want to watch your mentoring 10-minute mentor thing on it to get better at it. I mean, these are tools.
That was brilliant. Yeah, you want to watch that.
These are tools I would point people to and say, well, watch this. Or if you're a reading type person, then read this. Those are great tools.
You know what the do-over is that I want is I'm going to redo my tour of Pathways level 3 to 5. In the doing of it, I learned so much that I realized that I didn't present it in the best way I could. So I'm totally going to repackage that and give it again, because there's so much goodness in, just in the knowledge of how to approach that, that can make a huge difference, I think, to a lot of people. So, I believe in the program. I was a Pathways ambassador from the start, but I didn't understand it for a couple of years. And even so, I'm learning stuff now. I'm going, oh, I didn't know that. And, it's time to get that knowledge out there. That's for sure.
And I just like to offer the comment. I think the Pathways methodology is brilliant. We massively needed an update to how we, and that part was great. And, the 11 passed and 5 levels. The issue really is how they wired it with ones and zeros is what's, causing the grief, right? Like people are like, they get to a certain page and it's just a screen with a bunch of gobbledygook. And what does launch mean versus archive versus activate or whatever? It's the buttonology, I think, that's the big issue. So we got a couple of people who are good buttonologists.
Yeah.
So.
Fran, how about your clubs? I mean, like you've said, you have a lot of experienced members, but you have mentorship programs, correct? And how do they help mentor new members through Pathways?
So we also at times will stay after a meeting. If anybody has any questions on Pathways after a meeting, we can walk you through it. As I said, one of our members actually she lives right in Deep River, went to Morris's house and actually walked him through how to log on his computer, so that he could actually see what he was doing, and he jumped in and he finally did a speech. I mean, he'd done, I don't know how many speeches through the legacy program, but he was just really, really reluctant to tackle the Pathways. But now he's on his way, on the journey. So
I've noticed that, if we were keeping statistics on it, I think there were a lot of experienced members who really stalled with Pathways, that they just couldn't figure out how to embrace the whole thing and what they could get out of it. So yeah, I'm always fascinated with how to help the reluctant experienced Toastmaster.
For some people, I love the books. I mean, I will be honest, I am one of the people that loves the books as well. And I still have copies of them because I think it's really helpful, a lot of the information that's in there. But what I'm encouraging people is get through the first couple of speeches, like get through your icebreaker, get going to get into the electives, because the electives is really where Pathways comes together. I mean, you have phenomenal choices there to be able to do. You could do blogs, you could do social media, you can do so much, and you can relate it to work or not relate it to work. I mean, I'm semi-retired. I work from home, been working from home for 11 years, but I'm delving into social media. I'm doing blogs. There's a number of other things I'm doing, so I can do my levels in that. I mean, it's an opportunity to really grow. I mean, there's storytelling. There's all the pieces that were there in the legacy program. It's a matter of finding them. And I think once they opened up the levels, because at one point they were restricting you, can only do this much. You can't go any further. And now you can go here, and now you can go here. And now it's like you can go anywhere you want. You can jump ahead. You could do level 3, level 4, come back and do your level 1, level 2, depending on where you are. So for people that are from the legacy program, people that have got all that background, I mean, it's a great opportunity for them to maybe even start level 3 if that makes them more comfortable, and then go back and do level 1 and 2. But I mean, I've done probably 20 competent communicators, maybe more. I'm not really sure. I'd have to go back and look, but it's the same thing. You're doing level 1 again. So what? I did 30 speeches, 10 speeches 20 times. Wow.
Estelle, did you have a question? Oh, you're muted, sorry.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just, I did have a question, but listening to Fran, I found it very interesting. I've observed in our club, which is a very active club, that our established members who've got, CC Gold and what have you, they have not necessarily embraced Pathways. They are not making speeches anymore. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to Francine about this, and it would be wonderful to get them back on track giving speeches, because many of them are excellent speakers, but they look at Pathways and they look at, oh God, I got to do an icebreaker, and then I got to do this, and whatever their reasons are. And even I mean, how many times do I want to do an icebreaker and then have a speech and someone, the next part of level 1? I'm not thrilled about it. So I wonder, my very, very first reaction when I saw Pathways and started reading through it was, where is the forward movement for experienced people?
Yep.
That's what I wanted to comment on.
Yeah, you know what this should be is a workshop at a conference or just a workshop in general. And it's a workshop I'd love to do because it's
Mhm.
such a huge miss, because these were the people that we relied on to explain to new members how great the program was. Now a new member comes in and they're like, meh, I don't really like it. So that's not very inspiring, but it's a huge negative drag. The statistics are horrible. It's almost like 2/3 of all clubs in the district have not finished the educationals for level 1, like that DCP requirement, which is brutal. And it just means that many clubs are not embracing the Pathways program. So it's a major opportunity. Karen, did you have a comment?
You had done a training session on the levels in Pathways, or that we had 2 out of 11 that were leadership, or 2
It's the other way around.
were
Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
and not leadership. The thing that I'm noticing is that in our club is that most people prefer to do their own sort of storytelling, not being told, this is your subject matter, you have to work around the subject matter. How do we inspire our members to fall into that leadership role and get them to understand that it is all about communication,
Yeah.
even though it's just leadership?
So we need a project around this. We'll have to pick 3 really reluctant people and take them through the whole program and just see if we can convince them. We'll videotape it. It'll be like reality TV. Now, here's the funny thing though. So I'm in a few different clubs, and one of the clubs has members exactly like what you're describing, but they've also never really dove into it. So they don't even know if there's a speech that fits the thing that they're trying to do. And, you know, part of my role in that club is going to be to convince those guys, well, hang on a second, this is a perfect thing for that project. This is a perfect thing for that project. And that's why I was so inspired by that Pathways levels 3 to 5 as a possible workshop, because, you know, just explaining it's not enough. Those are the people who would embrace the Pathways program if they saw that, how to take your ideas and really connect them to the projects. So there's something, Steve? You got a
Yeah,
comment?
Scott, I think there's a generational issue. There's 2 issues.
Oh, totally.
One issue is there's Pathways, and it has certain functionalities and, you know, projects and so on. Either you like it or you don't. But there's a legacy issue, which is, you know, that person who was, say, a club coach certification away from getting their DTM.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right, or you know what they were missing by, or they're 80% of the way through and it all got wiped out, right? Well, not all of it actually. The club coach stuff still survived, and your HPL, those higher level activities all stayed. But if you didn't have your ACG and your, you know, advanced leader gold or whatever, like, and this is a problem. And I'll give you an example. I was getting my vaccine 2 days ago online. I ran into an old Toastmaster from another club. Said, oh, are you still with your club? He goes, no, I left. You know, they brought in that new system and I almost have my DTM, and he walked away. And the sad thing is, I don't know there's much you can do to change those folks. You know, every time an organization goes through a big cultural shift like we've just gone through, people are going to fall off. It's going to happen. We do our best to keep them. Mentoring certainly helps. It's the single biggest factor in retention, by the way. So there's lots you can do, but at the end of the day, there's just a group of people. They're like brontosaurs, right? they were the biggest thing on the planet for, you know, a long time, and then one day they all disappeared. Okay. And unfortunately, there's a group, I don't know what percentage it is, they're not going to change, and they're bitter about the fact that they invested all this, you know, time to get to ACG or whatever it was, and it got washed away.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so
Carrie, your hand was up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow on to that, it's interesting to me to hear the different things going on in different clubs and how they kind of tailor to the club. When I think of our club, we have a more heavily weighted on young members. And so I can see that the difference from what you're talking about. Well, our younger members generally they don't have a problem with the technical navigation of pathways. Some of them do, and there's some challenges, but generally they're pretty good getting into it. They don't have a problem. Of course, we've had some older members who have a challenge with that, and there's one member who's in his 80s who I finally printed off the project and did up a folder for everything he needed and brought it to him. That was the only way. It was the only way he was gonna. There was just no way this guy was gonna get into pathways. It was not going to be good use of his time. But the other thing I just wanted to mention is that I think in our club in particular, with all these members who are young career people, there's a real opportunity there to link the Pathways projects more to their work activities. And I'm always trying to encourage them, find, are you doing social media for work? Are you managing a meeting at work? Don't do extra work for Pathways, link it to something you're already doing. Because I love Pathways, but I think it shouldn't be extra work if you're already doing projects at work. You can make them link. And I would like to do a better job of helping them to make those links.
Yeah, that's another big secret, is aligning people's deepest interests with projects, aligning their work requirements with projects. We built a whole Revenue Canada club around the Revenue Canada competencies and aligning them with Toastmasters competencies. And it was fantastic. It worked out so well. Francine, you have your hand up. Do you have a comment or question?
Yes, I have a few comments.
Oh, sure. Fire away.
Okay, well, getting to in part to what Estelle mentioned regarding like our club, we only have a few members that have not embraced Pathways, but they have already attained their DTMs. And in what I've been doing lately, because I've had a meeting with those members in particular, is that I have been suggesting that since we are the more experienced and the longer standing members as well, that we're going to start creating our own legacy program. So I've incited them to think of the different areas that they really enjoyed when they were on the legacy program, whether it's, speeches or leadership, and that we were all going to start doing specific presentations. And then they would be presenting that, and then those presentations would be uploaded to our website that others could glean, similar to doing the educational tips on the different roles, because I've done many presentations myself. So everything is going to be done on video and uploaded. And the other thing that we're going to, I'm trying to figure out the way to do it, is that some, are retired. They are not seeking to improve their skills for a profession. They preferred the legacy because they had already tons of speeches they could do. They could do the communication and not necessarily leadership. So we're going to kind of start to incorporate that those who prefer just doing speeches, then they will do just speeches. And I've already have sent a request to TI International to investigate that, because you do have the both groups. So it's not to already take those who have been there as the foundation and then just throw them out the window because they're not all embracing Pathways.
Well, just on that point, though, you do know that in the Pathways, you could just download the manual, right?
Yeah.
For any path or...
No, I know, but there's still always certain projects at a different level. And not everyone's interested in learning how to blog or how do they, expand their social media platforms. They just want to do speeches.
No, but every path you could just do speeches. You don't have to do those things. The funny thing is, in the list of electives, the electives are almost probably 90 to 95% the same for every single path. So as soon as you know what the electives actually are, you don't have to blog, you don't have to do social media. You can pick a speech in any one of those elective groups. So you actually could go through and just make it a speech, different speeches from beginning to end.
Can you repeat the electives?
What's that? Can you repeat them?
The electives?
For sure you can. Like, the bottom line is
Because we never used to be able to repeat anything in the legacy program. You were always adding something to your profile. So
well, you can repeat the elective doing a different thing.
Of course, yes.
Right? Yes.
But for an example, I never want to do a blog.
Right.
I
So
never
you never have to do one.
You don't have to.
So that's what I mean. Eventually, you're going to use all of the other ones. So then you're sort of stuck with using a blog. That's why I asked the question, can you repeat them?
Well, you'd have to, if you do multiple paths, then you have multiple new opportunities to do the same elective if you loved it so much. One of my favorite speeches is the professional speaking speech. It's 18 to 22 minutes or whatever. And I've done it twice, but in 2 different paths. So I get credit for both. And, the reality is it's not so much about the credit. It's more the strategy for learning that's most important. So, it's not that hard to have 2 paths on the go or 3. A lot of senior members I know have many more than that. We're just heading into the last 10 minutes. Dudley, go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll just do a wrap up to highlight the most important things we've talked about. So go ahead.
Thank you kindly, Scott. Well, actually, it was mostly a comment. Good evening, everyone. I'm really glad to have listened or participated in this meeting. I think everyone shared a lot of great comments or ideas to, I guess, better perform, to have our clubs better perform. If I can have one suggestion, English is is not my first or not my native language. And I've heard that acronym before, KISS. And I think native speakers put the emphasis on the simple whenever this is used. But as a non-native speaker, with all the challenge, because you always second guess yourself. So I think when you hear that acronym, you usually put the emphasis on the last S, which is not something that you want to have your second speakers who have English as a second language maybe feel or something. And it's not something that we do consciously, of course, but it's just something that I wanted to put out there. But other than that, I really enjoyed the botanologist, I think I heard, specialist. That was great. But thank you, everyone, for having shared all these useful comments.
Well, just so you know, the more possibly diplomatic way of avoiding having to say the last word in the KISS is you can talk about the 80-20 rule, because that's vital. If you know the 20% of the content that you really need to know to make the biggest difference, that changes everything, because there is an overwhelming amount of content in Pathways and you don't need to do it all. You just need to do that 20% that's going to make the biggest difference. And sometimes you need a mentor to tour you through what that 20% looks like. I just did an exercise with an advanced speaker where we did exactly that. And to be honest with you, she was blown away. I think like Francine, she thought there were all these limitations in there, and then realized that she could carve out this path that would be incredibly helpful. In our last few minutes, I just want to make sure that we cover off these most important points. I'd like everybody to just tell me what they thought were the most important 1 or 2 things that they learned. That's a way of kind of summing up what we looked at tonight. And Rebecca, if you don't mind, maybe I'll start with you. Were there 2 big things that you're going to take away from this evening?
Yeah, I think so much goodness. One of the things is really maximizing the educationals that we give. So we have done that, but I think there's a real opportunity to do more of that. And then because we've had so many new members in our club, I'd like to record them too, because I think it's a great opportunity to share that. The second piece that I've implemented, and I'm going to continue as well based on conversations tonight, is I meet as the VP of Ed with our new members for about an hour as well, really look at what brought them into Toastmasters, what they're looking to accomplish. So I'm going to build on that to get them to really solidify their date in that first meeting as well for their icebreaker.
Yeah.
But tie in those goals, because I think that's really helped us too, in that, you said you want to do this for work, here's some opportunities for that. And why recreate or reinvent the wheel when it's something they're doing anyway? Just tie it into Toastmasters.
Yeah, that's perfect. That takes some wisdom, but it's such a worthy thing to do. Karen, were there 1 or 2 things that you're fresh ideas
2 main things that I took away was every week doing the educational, but in an extended, we do a 1 minute educational every week, which is just a short little extra, but to do it a little bit more extended and record it and start a library. So I thought that was a great idea. And then of course, the other one was the breakout roles to help new members start as a speaker, then help them be an evaluator. So those things are more encouraging on the mentoring side of things that I think is really important. So thank you. I appreciate all the
Okay.
information.
Thanks, Karen. Francine, you have a point or two that are a fresh idea for you?
Well, I like the idea on the breakout rooms, particularly if you're going to do a speech marathon. Like we have done speech marathons on occasion, and we cleared the whole agenda and there was as many speeches as evaluators, but I like that idea because then you can even incorporate more if you want. So that's one. And of course, to probably implement a little bit more on the educational tips. I think like I do some, but I think we can increase that. Just like snippets.
Out of curiosity, does your club refer people to the 10-minute mentor videos on YouTube?
Yes, I send everything, yes, to our club, and more have been looking at them. And I think they're excellent. It's not too long, but long enough.
Yeah, Steve, just so you know, that was Brian Sutton's idea. The 10-minute mentor thing.
I am not surprised to hear that, but I've looked at a couple of them and they are not 10 minutes. That is false advertising.
Steve. Okay, I was horrified. I think one of them was 17 minutes. I was horrified. What could I do? I couldn't rename it. The 17-minute, I'll change the name on that one. I know, Steve, you're right. Most of them have been pretty good though, but that one wasn't. Estelle, do you have an idea or two, a fresh idea or two that you're taking away from this evening? I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, that's okay. I knew. It was quite encouraging to hear that clubs are at different levels and have different things going on. I happen to belong to the club that Francine is running beautifully. And we do have a lot of established members who I've been thinking, okay, we got to get these people involved. There's so much talent kind of sitting by the sidelines. So tonight encouraged me in that regard, and we'll work on it. Thank you.
Well, I promise you both though, especially if you find that a complication in your club, I would be happy to put a workshop together for specifically for those people. I got to write it up anyway. I'd be happy to test it out in your club. So just let me know, just send me an invite and I'll put it together. You tell me how much time I can devote to it. I'm writing something very similar now, so I'd be more than happy to do it. And I'd be more than happy to get the feedback from those members just to see if it's striking the right chord or if there needs to be something else.
Sure. For me, you take as much time as you want. I'll give you the time you need.
Oh, sure. Oh, that's fantastic. I'll go way over as Steve pointed out. Dudley, did you have a thought or two that you're taking away from this evening?
Thank you, Scott. Like I mentioned, I'm really glad to hear all of the comments that were shared, especially the ones that were referring to a lot of the bugs that have been worked out in Pathways, because I know it was a lot of, it was basically a deterrent for people to kind of jump on board, but things have been worked out. So glad to hear. And it's a good thing that you organize these kind of meetings. So thank you, Scott, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Pathways is an exercise in patience. So you can think of it as trying to grow your skills in being patient with things that don't work quite properly. It's a brilliant program that's in a bit of a complicated structure. So